Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rain of Fire Radio, episode 448, coming to you on Monday, September 26th. We're going to look back at USC's 17-14 win over the Oregon State Beavers in the final moments in Corvallis. We're going to take your questions and so much more here on this episode. As always, feel free to follow us on social media. We're at Reign of Troy on Twitter and Facebook. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Our email address is reignoftroy@fanside.com. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, and you can follow me on Twitter at MichaelCastFS. But of course, I'm joined along with the star of the show, my co-host, who you can follow on Twitter at Penguin of Troy, Alicia Derritola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, we are back to talk about USC and Oregon State and so much more. But I think the biggest thing, the biggest thing to discuss right now is in doing our preparation for the show. And of course, we always talk about the rundown that we put together. The rundown for this episode is like 6 pages. And it's always it's a fun thing to put together.
Yeah, yes. This is not a long rundown.
In doing this and doing some pre-show research, at least I discovered that on the Apple Podcast charts, this show, Reign of Troy Radio, is the 18th, number 18 on the Apple Podcast chart for football podcasts in South Korea.
Hey, the Trojan family spreads far and wide, including South Korea. We're big in Seoul, and you love to see it. That's awesome.
You absolutely love to see it. We could not do this without you guys. It is
our loyal listeners in South Korea. You are our favorites.
Yes, the Republic of Korea. We are very thankful, and we are happy to be the official USC podcast of South Korea.
Yeah, that's us. We should put that on our tagline, like Reign of Troy Radio, the official USD podcast of South Korea. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. If you're watching us on YouTube, welcome to the show as always. Be sure to like us and subscribe us. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Help us grow the show. As always, it allows us to become maybe even higher ranked than other countries. We're like 120. I think it was 123rd ranked football podcast in Saudi Arabia. So
we got to do work in Saudi Arabia. Maybe we just talk about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix and
something,
build up some fan base over there.
Yeah. So we can always grow the show. As always, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts as well, and right here on YouTube. Subscribe, leave your comments, join us on our community page. And so much more.
We are so close to 1,000 subscribers, guys.
Yeah.
You gotta hit that subscribe button. Get us over that threshold. We'll stop bugging you about it every episode.
Well, no, because I want to get to 100,000 subscribers. That's true. Because I want the little thing on the wall. I want the play button.
We do want the play button. So if you aren't subscribed yet, get on it. Do one solid for the show.
Yes, SC struggles to get like 65,000 people at the Coliseum, but that doesn't mean we can't have 100,000 subscribers.
Hey, if we took out an ad, let's get an ad on like a biplane or whatever. Let's do a banner ad that says subscribe to Reign of Troy Radio on YouTube. If everyone at the Coliseum on Saturday subscribes, then we'll be well on our way to 100,000. We'll just have to go get an ad out at, Kansas's stadium too to fill out the remaining 40,000.
Yeah. That would certainly help because of course Kansas has sold out a football game before USC.
Yes.
Breaking news. Shout out to the Jayhawks, Rock Chalk.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks for joining the show. As always, Alicia, let's get right into it and start with the news, shall we? We have to start where we start every Fallout episode when we're talking about the news, is talking about the polls. And that goes with USC going up in the polls, of course, up in the polls to number 6 in the AP poll and number 6 in the coaches poll. USC remains 7th in Sagarin's ratings. Utah now up to 6th in those ratings as well.
I'm excited to see SP Plus too as we get into the next couple of weeks because I think it'll start to
week 7
start to look
after
interesting.
Week 7, I believe.
Yeah, this makes sense. Oklahoma lost in front of USC. USC takes up that spot. I think the one to watch this week is obviously Clemson. They are playing a good NC State team. They just squeaked by Wake Forest. They've got another challenge this week. If they lose, USC could easily be in the top 5. Also, Michigan is playing Iowa, and they're going to Iowa. Iowa's offense is horrendous, but they have a really good defense. That could end up being an interesting game as well. So there will be opportunities for USC to keep moving up. I put on Twitter, keep winning, keep rising. Like that's the gist of it. Take care of your business, and your polls will reflect that. So just got to keep chugging away.
Yeah. 100%. Keep rising is like Cameron Rising. Who's
like Cameron Rising.
USC will face in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think Utah's number 12 in the poll.
Yeah.
So they're moving up. Oregon's moving up. Washington moving up. So the Pac-12 has a bunch of teams in the top 15. Now, if they don't cannibalize each other,
well, SC doesn't play a lot of them.
Oregon or Washington.
SC doesn't play Oregon. SC doesn't play Washington. They can't cannibalize those two.
But if UCLA plays Washington on Friday
night, yeah.
If UCLA beats Washington, they will be ranked.
Yes.
So they're receiving votes already. So the polls are USC's going to have opportunities to have some impressive wins. Washington State is playing. Who are they playing? They're playing someone interesting that they could continue to rise, receiving votes in the poll as well after their loss to Oregon, that USC is going to face them coming up too. So, we'll keep an eye on the polls. They ultimately don't matter, but we'll keep an eye on them.
Yeah, I think the Pac-12 is setting up to have a really, really fascinating year. It seems like so many of the teams are sort of better than you would expect. Washington probably better than we expect. Maybe we were too down on them the last year. I mean, they did win the North in 2020. Should have been USC's opponent in that championship game if it wasn't for the big C19 word. And UCLA is a big question mark, 4-0, but they've played absolutely nobody.
And not looked particularly impressive doing it.
So, okay, I'm going to go to bat quickly for one split second for Chip Kelly. I think Chip Kelly, after going to coach in the NFL and be a head coach at 2 different spots, I think genuinely he views the non-conference schedule as the preseason.
He's been at UCLA for 5 years now. He doesn't get to use that. He needs every win he can get.
Yeah, I agree.
You can't take those games off.
Well, they did go 4-0.
Yes, but
to be fair,
they, Bowling Green gave them some trouble.
Yes.
South Alabama gave them a lot of trouble.
Right.
I don't think that's a valid excuse for Chip Kelly. They are 4-0. They get to again prove yourself against a Washington team that I think people are high on, but Michigan State, that win for Washington over Michigan State is now looking a little shaky because Michigan State looks like they have completely and utterly collapsed. So,
yeah,
I think it's a really, really interesting matchup on Saturday. I mean, on Friday night.
Yeah,
between those two teams.
I'm just saying, I don't think UCLA has really put themselves out there to actually know what they.
They haven't had a chance. This is their chance. But do some Pac-12 bashing real quick. The 2 biggest games in the Pac-12 this weekend, what do we think they are? Washington, UCLA on Friday night.
Yes, absolutely.
And on Saturday, Oregon State, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Washington, UCLA, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, start on Friday. Oregon State, Utah on the Pac-12 network. So you go promoting your conference. I know you don't enjoy these particular conversations, but I just thought it was worth pointing out.
I think Oregon State's schedule to start the season, utterly insane.
Yeah.
Going into it, if we were an Oregon State podcast, I think we'd be it's the complete opposite of UCLA's schedule.
Yeah.
UCLA has played absolutely nobody. 3 non-conference games that they should have won, all of them by 30 points. at least, with South Alabama being the best of the three, and the one that gave them the hardest fight, obviously. And then you get Colorado, who like literally doesn't have a pulse at the moment. And then Oregon State, not only do they have to play Boise State, the most respected G5 on the planet,
Although
year in and year out, which they might not be that good this year, sure, but it's
still,
it's
as
still
far
Boise
as scheduling
State, right?
goes, that's
yeah, it's still Boise State. They had Fresno State again, another very respected G5 on the road. That's never going to be easy.
Mm-mm.
They had to play a legitimately elite FCS team. Then they had to play SC. Now they have to go on the road to Rice Eccles to play Utah. I want. Is it Washington State that they play next week?
If it's Washington State next
SC,
week,
SC plays Washington State.
Yeah,
I can't remember who they play next week, but like
it's tough enough.
It's insanity. It's insanity that their schedule the first 6 weeks is great.
This is why I'm very frustrated as someone who looks at the polls and someone who does broader college football coverage now. It is very frustrating when you look around and see like teams like Kansas can't get ranked, teams like UCLA not getting ranked, Oregon State not getting ranked. And I think Oregon State certainly had a better case than UCLA in terms of just the difficulty of their schedule going in. Meanwhile, you see like teams like Florida that had to lose again in order to get to drop out of the polls. You have teams like, every SEC team you can think of, Texas A&M and everybody, Arkansas, everybody just all up in the polls just simply because they haven't lost a game yet. It's frustrating as a sort of somebody focused in on the Pac-12. I think the Big 12 gets to make this complaint as well, that like you not only have to be perfect in these conferences to get any sort of national look, but you need to do it for the first 6 weeks of the season to even get into that conversation, because Oregon State is not going to be ranked for the rest of the season, but they're a good football team, and like they're never going to get the respect that they deserve.
I think they could if they win. They beat Utah.
If they beat Utah,
on Saturday,
yeah, absolutely.
They're going to be ranked. I think the crazy thing is talking about Oregon State not getting respect. I searched Oregon State schedule on Google.
Mm-hmm.
You know the little Google bug that pops up that auto-populates the schedule? Did
it go to basketball?
It went to basketball.
Yeah. Well.
What the hell, man?
Yep.
Oregon State football is legitimately good. Come on, respect the Beavers.
Yeah.
Respect the Beavers. Let's get some respect about the Beavers in there. Yeah, it's wild. Anyways, SC ends up winning on Saturday, 17-14. In a wild game, which ultimately leads to SC going 4-0. Washington State was looking like they were going to be 4-0, but they end up with a loss. They had an epic couging. They couged it at the end against Oregon, so they are now going to be 3-1, which means when USC plays Washington State next week, it will not be a battle of the unbeatens. But that game still will be in prime time because, Alicia, USC and Washington State are going to kick off at 4:30 p.m. Pacific on Big Fox.
It's a good time slot. Really good opportunity for
the one USC. Everyone wants.
Yeah, USC is going to have the national audience. You can make a statement here. Washington State looks like they have something about them. I think Dickert has done a really good job since taking over, and under difficult circumstances, and you have to take them seriously. But these are the kind of games that USC needs to perform in, right? Like if you want to make a case for USC being ahead of Clemson or USC actually being involved in the playoff sort of picture, you have to win this game when you have the national audience, because more often than not this season, you are going to end up with the 7:30 kickoff like you did this last week, like you did with ASU. You're going to have another game on the Pac-12 network. Like you got to take your moments in the spotlight and prove that people should be paying attention to you. And so this is the opportunity. It's just a shame it's not undefeated, because Washington State had that game wrapped up and they couged it. They couged it bad.
Yeah. It was one of those where I thought they were, beyond fulfilling all of the expectations, and so much more. They get the big win on the road against Wisconsin. They come back against Oregon. They come out in 2 games later against Oregon and really start to push them around, and then it gets to the fourth quarter and everything kind of falls apart. So we're going to see what the Cougs have in store for SC in a couple of weeks. But let's talk about USC and Oregon State. SC gets the win on Saturday, 17-14. We put a poll over here on YouTube. Be sure to join us if you're in the YouTube chat to vote in the poll. Did USC's win over the Oregon State Beavers make you more or less confident in the Trojans' ability to win the Pac-12? Last I checked, it was at 89% more confident. What say you, Alicia?
I think that's got to be a reflection of the defense. I think that USC fans were probably somewhat comfortable with the idea of being a form of Big 12 bad, where you just got to score a bunch of points and the defense just gonna get run over, but be opportunistic, and you sort of go through the season that way. I think this defensive performance does a lot to show that this defense can get the job done and do it not because they're sort of fluking their way into turnovers. I think we talked about this on the CarCast, but the most encouraging thing about this defensive performance, aside from it being another step forward from the weeks before, is that the turnovers weren't necessarily the end-all be-all. Like, they weren't necessarily going to give up touchdowns on the end of those drives based on the way that the drives had gone forward. Obviously, turnovers are huge. They end drives. That's why they're so valuable. But they weren't. It wasn't the if USC didn't force those 4 turnovers, Oregon State was going to put up 35 points. It wasn't that kind of a
because they were still getting the stops.
Yeah.
They were getting the stops when they needed to. They were forcing Oregon State to settle for a field goal that they missed.
Mm-hmm.
They were forcing Oregon State to punt when they absolutely needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a little bit different than the Stanford game in that sense, where the Stanford game, they were getting fleeced between the 10-yard lines, right?
Yeah.
And then Stanford just couldn't get it into the end zone at the end. This was a much different game in that sense. And it does show the improvement of USC's defense from last week. The same thing. You look at the Fresno State game. Fresno State was getting into the red zone. They were only 1 of 4. And then they were going away with no points. They missed a field goal. They hit on the very last play of the game. They didn't get it in the end zone. Lincoln Riley talked about how important it was to finish that game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look at the extreme next week. SC going on the road against Corvallis, losing, needing to pull it out of their ass, and you just instilled the week before that you play the entire 60 minutes, you play to the final whistle, and SC needed to do that against Oregon State to ultimately do it. And so you can look at the game, I think, in one of two ways. You can look at it and say it was disappointing for USC because the offense was not there. It was completely uncharacteristic. It was not what we expected at all. It's what nobody expected for USC to score 17 points and 17 really difficult points for them to score. Nobody expected that. And you can say that that's an indictment on the offense. Sure, I will hear that point 100%. At the same point, this was a USC team that we've seen in the past where when the offense is going, the defense has not been there to back them up. And when the defense is going, the offense has not been there to back them up. What we've seen so far this year is that at Stanford, when the defense struggled, the offense pulled their weight early on in the game and put the game out of the reach. And it was sort of that gravedigger offense that we talked about, threw Stanford in a grave, told them to dig themselves out, and obviously they couldn't. This game, completely different. The offense is struggling, and the defense goes up and stands tall and gets the win. And I think that when you put those two things together, that has to make you feel good about going forward because you know that both sides of the ball can step up when they need to. And this was the game that you needed to get a win if you want to win the conference.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to win the conference, the divisions don't matter anymore, right? They're irrelevant. And yes, USC would be in the same division as Utah, because obviously they were both in the South, but it doesn't really matter anymore. And the North is looking really good with Oregon and Washington. You're going to miss those teams. You have to take advantage of every opportunity to get a win. And even if you're able to get this one, it was huge. It was huge for the Trojans to show some heart, and be able to kind of, push the issue on defense.
Yeah, and I think that's the big takeaway that Lincoln Riley talked about. I think that's the big takeaway that I have, is that we saw some of the character of this team, and we saw, yes, that goal line stand carry over, the mentality and the attitude and the approach on defense carry over to a really, really big game against a good offense.
Yeah.
Oregon State is not known for their defense. This was supposed to be an offensive shootout, and credit to both defenses for really taking that to heart and responding the way that they did. I think both sides absolutely were riled up to play, and USC ultimately had the edge there. I wouldn't get ahead of ourselves here, though, because going into the season, I talked a lot about why I thought that USC, aside from the fact that it's very difficult to go undefeated, just for the record, why I thought USC would be in danger of having a few losses is because in college football especially, some weeks your high-powered offense shows up with a dud like they did against Oregon State.
Yeah.
And especially in Alex Grinch defense, I pulled out the stats from Oklahoma and other stops for him. Alex Grinch defenses tend to be very boom or bust. It tends to be they hold you to 14, they hold you to 17, or they give up 35 or 45. So we have now seen a USC offensive performance that was very subpar. And part of me is happy to get it out of the way and to have Caleb Williams and that group have to come together and respond, and we get to see how they respond against ASU. But the fact of the matter is we still have not seen what happens when things go really wrong for this defense. And so you have to prepare yourself for the idea that things are going very well for this team, but you're not going to see that defense every single week. You need to be able to have your offense bail them out going back the other way. And there's still a pretty decent chance that USC will have a game where the defense doesn't perform like they did against Oregon State and the offense doesn't perform like they did in the first 3 weeks of the season, and you just get bit. So that's sort of where I'm coming at with the idea of what this performance sort of means for the rest of the season. I think it bodes well because we've seen the defense take considerable steps forward. That doesn't mean that USC is out of the woods yet in terms of the questions that I have for a squad that has been rebuilt, that is still working through their growing pains as they move forward. So, just temper it a little bit. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how this team responds in the next few weeks, but it's still, there's still a lot of football to play, and we'll see how they respond.
Yeah, it's 4 games in year one, and 4 games in year one, this is a defensive performance that you take a million times over.
Absolutely.
A million times over in my book, especially when you look at what they're doing in terms of turnovers. And I want to talk about the turnovers a little bit here. From the defensive standpoint, SC has forced more turnovers than anyone in America with 14. In a vacuum, that's incredible. Then you talk about the offensive side. They have not committed a turnover. The only team in America to have not committed a turnover. In a vacuum, that's incredible. Mm-hmm. Number one in both of those things, which means by default they're number one in turnover margin, which is really the most important aspect of that, is the net number, turnover margin. They're number one in that by plus 14. And I put out a bunch of stats on Twitter. Go follow me on Twitter, MichaelCastFS, if you want to see all the stats that I put out there on Sunday night. But the plus 14 is crazy because no one else is more than plus 9. So it's 5 plus 5 more than anyone else in America. And that's because SC has not turned the ball over themselves. And easily, if they would have turned the ball over, 3 or 4 times, that number drastically changes, right?
Yeah.
But they haven't. They're plus 14. I did the math over the 12 years of USC football from 2010 to 2021. 12 years. After Pete Carroll left, USC's aggregate turnover margin in those 149 games was plus 11. Plus 11.
Yeah, in
and
more
SC
than a decade.
Is plus 4 in 4 games. Obviously, small sample size, all of that.
Yeah.
But the great irony is that they took 149 games to just be plus 11. Tells you how this team is different. They're definitely different, but they're going to turn the ball over at some point. Turnover luck is something that we've talked about on this podcast before. It's something that the numbers and Bill Connolly has talked about. Fumbles, the way it usually pans out, you only recover about 50% of your fumbles. Luckily for USC's defense, they're really forcing interceptions more than anything. Tip balls, it's usually what happens after a tip ball is very random. But at the same time, you make your luck. And SC's has had its ability to make its luck as well.
And that's what we talked about the Rice game, that a lot of those tip balls were the receivers tipping the ball. So, yeah, we can take those and say, well, those are more luck side of tip ball kind of interceptions. But what's been really impressive over the last 3 weeks instead has been it's USC tipping those balls. It's like Eric Gentry getting his hand, his wingspan and using it to good effect. It just reminds me of that season that Uchenna Nwosu had, where he was just tipping balls at the line every second. And part of that is luck, but also part of that is you were in position to make those plays, and those plays matter and those plays count. So
yeah,
the thing that is really good to see is the idea of making your own luck. And so many times, have we talked about how like USC doesn't make their own luck. They make it hard on themselves this way and that way. And I think that you see this season, these 4 games are a little bit unicorny in terms of the turnover stuff. It usually doesn't go this perfectly for a team in this way, but USC gets credit through 4 games for sustaining this. Like, if this had happened across 2 games, it would have been, wow, that's really lucky. 3 games, it's like, okay, you're doing something to create your luck. 4 games, it's like, yes, you are absolutely having a role in your fortune here. And that's what has made me more and more confident. I don't think the turnover luck is going to continue the way that it has. Like,
it's probably not at this rate.
No, I'm not stupid enough to think that USC is going to have a +4 turnover margin in every game.
Yeah.
But I think we have now seen 4 games of proof that this offense is a this defense is a turnover-prone defense, and this offense is not a turnover-prone offense. So when they come, maybe it'll come in bunches. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But like, you look at the great USC defenses of the past, like in the Pete Carroll era, that's one of the things they did very well is
turnover margin and tackles for loss. Those are the big two stats.
And that wasn't Pete Carroll being lucky. Like, that was Pete Carroll knowing what the heck he's about as a defensive coordinator and getting his players to know what he's about and to execute the game plan. So I think that you can sort of have a balanced view on this, is that like, yeah, you're going to have some pushback on these numbers statistically, but this is, to me, after 4 games, what this defense is. So I'm ready to give them that credit and see what they can produce as the season goes on.
Yeah. I just looked it up. USC as a team led the country in 2004. 2008 was USC's best defense. I think we can agree. 2008. The 2004 team was the one that was loaded with All-Americans. They led the country with a plus 1.46 per game turnover margin.
And that's elite.
Right now they're at over 2.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
No, they're at over 3.
It's 14 in 4 games.
Over 3.
Yeah.
Math. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We're not math majors.
We're not math majors, no. But I mean, it's still a really good example of why that was Pete Carroll's philosophy. And it's just sort of playing out here that, yeah, this is how you win football games. Win the turnover battle.
Yeah, you win the turnover battle. And now through 4 games, Lincoln Riley has matched the Lane Kiffin era in terms of how many games SC has gone without committing a turnover. 4. 4-4 for Lincoln Riley, 43 for Lane Kiffin. Let's talk about the offense a little bit here. Travis Dye, pretty much the star on offense for the Trojans. It was his 3rd straight 100-yard game for USC, the first one to do that out of the backfield for the Trojans since Ronald Jones. It's crazy that he has been someone who has been so productive He was so productive at Oregon, and yet he has not had 3 straight 100-yard games. And these last 3 weeks, he has done that, mind you, while splitting carries with Austin Jones. He was definitely the main man on Saturday when he got 19 carries versus Austin Jones 5 carries. I thought Austin Jones had a sort of a poor game. I didn't think he was finding the hole nearly as much as Travis Dye was. And kudos to Lincoln Riley to continue to feed Dye. But he had 19 carries. He probably should have had 29, given the way how things went. How big of a game was that for Dye for you?
Huge for Dye. It just shows what he's about. I think that we might have already said that he was just a more all-around running back than Austin Jones at this point, and I think he proved it here. I think his vision in this game was really what set him apart. He took every yard that was available on the field for him, and just the way he hit the hole set him apart. The way he was able to turn on the jets set him apart. He's really an outstanding running back, and it's really fortunate that USC was able to bring him in and add him to this group. I will continue to go back to, if USC had just said, screw it, Caleb's not on his day, let's ride Travis Dye in the first half, they would have scored a couple more touchdowns, but they didn't. And that's part of the reason why this offense struggled so much, is because there wasn't a willingness to just say, you know what, the best player on the field on offense right now is Travis Dye. Let's just let him roll. And I think it would have helped the offensive line a lot too, because they were struggling in pass pro. Mm-hmm. And you hear from offensive linemen all the time, pros, college, everywhere, that like, if your offensive line is struggling, like give them, it really helps an offensive line to be able to say, just push forward, just bully guys forward.
Yeah.
And I think that would have just mentally helped as well. So hopefully this is another situation where when they look back at the tape, when they look back at what went wrong in this game, maybe in future they'll be more willing to say, you know what, it's a Dye game, just go for it and let's see what happens.
Well, especially when Oregon State was allowing those plays to stand. I think that they were trying to take away the deep ball, try to prepare themselves for all of USC's receivers, and sort of giving SC the run.
Yeah.
Well, then take the run. Take it. Yeah. And don't be afraid to take what the defense is giving you and then force the defense to change out of what they're giving you.
Yeah, and Dye was threatening to break one long. Like he was.
I mean, he did. He had that 36-yard run on the first drive.
Like break one to the end zone. Like he was threatening all night pretty much. So if you just keep feeding the ball early, like he could just pop one, and then you're on the board, and then you don't have to worry so much about what's going on with your offense, and the defense has to worry more about, well, Travis Dye needs to be the guy that we focus on stopping, and then you move towards, okay, we're gonna get Caleb back in here. He doesn't have to worry so much about everything else. So. Yeah.
Yeah, and in talking about Travis Dye, I wanted to bring up what our friends over at USCFootball.com and the Peristyle podcast have been talking about the idea of how USC doesn't have mercenaries.
Dye is the perfect example.
I thought it was very fascinating that you can absolutely look at this and say, yes, this is a USC team full of mercenaries, because the way I look at it is the players who are stepping up big are the ones that are going to be sitting in the press conference, and continuously the players sitting up there in the press conferences after games are, this game is Eric Gentry and Travis Dye, 2 transfers. Before, like a media day, it was Caleb Williams and Shane Lee, right? Like 2 transfers. And there's transfers all up and down this team: Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, like Solomon Byrd, like the list goes on and on.
Who are the 2 best players on offense, or 3 best players on offense? It's Caleb Williams, Travis Dye, and Jordan Addison. Who are the 3 best players on defense? It's Tuli Tuipulotu, Eric Gentry so far,
and then probably Kalen Bullock.
And Kalen Bullock or Shane Lee, depending on what game you're looking at. So, the transfers are certainly, and Mekhi Blackman has been huge. Mekhi Blackman has been absolutely huge. He was huge pick on Saturday against Oregon State. So the not only is the depth chart littered with transfers, but like the impact guys are definitely the transfers.
Yes. Well, yes.
But they're so easy to root for, and that's I think that was the point that the Peristyle podcast was sort of making, is that like Travis Dye has fit in perfectly. Like it took him 2 seconds to feel like a Trojan. Like all of these guys, it's 4 games in, and I am just in love with all of them. Like I want to see them continue to do incredible things. And I don't even think of Travis Dye as a Duck anymore. I don't even think of Caleb Williams as a Sooner. I don't even think of Gentry as a Sun Devil. Like they're Trojans full, through and through. Like it maybe we're just caught up in the it's 4-0 and blah blah blah, but like the way this team has come together has really shocked me. I was preaching all off season. We've never seen something like this in college football. We don't know how a team that's cobbled together through the transfer portal this way will react. And they have answered every question that I had on the chemistry front. So
yeah, and I was so skeptical of that. Like I thought that a lot of the talk that we had seen from Twitter, a lot of the pushback that I had gotten from my 9-3 prediction was, or me mentioning that even great coaches, the last 5 coaches that have won a national championship have all lost year one games that you wouldn't have thought, right? Like it takes a while for everything to gel, and don't expect the world in year one. And I got so many tweets about, but they didn't have the transfer portal, so that's all irrelevant. And to me, that was problematic because, like, okay, so yes, this is the first major blue blood that is going at it with a transfer model rebuild. So then we can't assume anything then by that logic, because we don't know if it'll go positively or negatively. Why are we just by default assuming the positive, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think so far we can absolutely see that that it has gone great. And I don't necessarily think that this is going to be the standard, but I think that this is because
could Nebraska do this? I don't know that Nebraska could do it.
I don't think that it has anything to do with the ability to bring in all these players helps. But I think the key is to be able to find a common goal, find to be able to motivate them, be able to find players who are fits, all those different things.
And that's what they talked about.
Which comes back to coaching. And my biggest comparison for all of this is because, in a real sense, they should feel like a bunch of mercenaries, but they don't. And the only comparison that I have to this team is the 2017-18 Vegas Golden Knights. They were the expansion team in the NHL. Mind you, I don't. SC had a lot more expectations than an expansion team in the NHL, but after
but it was a roster cobbled together.
Roster cobbled together.
The expansion draft, for those who don't know, works like this: you have the expansion team, and then they draft a player, or how many players? Like
one player
from every team in the league, and they only get to draft the players that every team can like protect certain players to have them not be able to be drafted. But you basically you pull the leftovers together from
and to make a Big Brother reference.
Brother reference.
Yeah, yes. But the thing is that that year, Vegas Golden Knights went from an expansion team. Historically, expansion teams are historically terrible, right?
Yeah.
They ended up going to the Stanley Cup final and losing to the Caps. Nearly won the whole thing. And the bond between all the players and what they kept talking about all year long was that they gelled together, calling themselves a bunch of misfits because, my team didn't want me. And now
because each one of them knew that their team didn't protect them from getting picked in that draft.
And so they had this chip on their shoulder. Now, I don't think that SC is finding players who have a chip on the shoulder. Like, I don't think Travis Dye is coming to SC because, Oregon didn't want me anymore.
Yeah.
No, I think SC has found guys who have the common goal of, some of these guys needed fresh starts like Shane Lee. Some of them needed to avoid a toxic situation like Eric Gentry.
And boy, was he right to get
yes, 1,000%. Yeah. Some of these guys wanted to follow their coach, like Caleb Williams and Mario Williams. Some of these guys wanted to maximize their value, like Jordan Addison. So all of them had different individual missions like that, but the commonality was that SC was the place because they wanted to do it with Lincoln Riley because they believed in what he could do. And I think that you put that all together, and you have to put this on the coaching staff for being able to create chemistry out of nothing, because it very easily could have become just a bunch of names. How many times have the Lakers tried to do this and like embarrass themselves because they got a bunch of names? Oh, they got Steve Nash and they got Dwight Howard and all these guys, Russell Westbrook, that like all these names, and they never gel together just because they're names, right? It takes more than just the names, more than just the talent.
And that's one of the things that this coaching staff talked about in the offseason, was that they were selective with their transfers. They did sort of scout out the chemistry side of it. They talked to coaches and people around the players about like, what kind of teammate is he like that kind of stuff. And I think that goes to Randy Sandlin in the chat has said, Riley said when picking players out of the portal that besides their football abilities, they were looking at mental and character fit. And I think we're seeing that absolutely. You know, you could imagine coaching staffs around the country saying that all the time, but like I think what we're seeing that in practice is that they really found guys who were ready to buy in completely. And it's an interesting coaching job too, because there was two phases of buy-in that they needed. Number one, they needed to get the guys that transferred in to buy into the program and buy into the rebuild and buy into Lincoln Riley and everything like that. And then they needed the guys who remained to buy into something new and maybe something more difficult, because it was going to be a change of the way that they'd always done, and taking them out of their comfort zones and all that kind of stuff. And to me, the guys who have stuck around have all seemed to have bought in as well. Like you're seeing the way the offensive line has played, given, you know, this past weekend, they struggle a lot, but those guys definitely bought into to Henson and the new coaching on the offensive line. The guys on defense, we're seeing that everyone has bought in there as well. So I just think that you have to compliment the coaching staff. You have to compliment the players for being coachable and being willing to be good teammates and very much to put the team on their shoulders the way that they have. But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, and at the end of the season, I think it'll be really interesting to look back and sort of have this conversation again and see like how did the transfer rebuild really work in the grand scheme. But like 4 games in, you have to say this was a huge success, and a success that really speaks to the quality of USC's coaches and their ability to sort of to observe and sort of evaluate how someone's going to fit in the room.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, you just want to keep moving on that going forward and get the most out of everybody and most out of the team. And Trojans so far are doing that. Easily could be 3-1, but here they are 4-0 because they were able to.
And there would be no shame in being 3-1. Like,
no, I think it depends. If we go 3-1, I think we're spending a lot more time talking about how Caleb Williams had a horrific game.
Yes, absolutely. But you and I both predicted 3-1. That USC. I think you had USC at 2-2 after 4 weeks. So like again, it's USC is getting wins in a game that they easily could have lost, and so you take that win absolutely. But you also we what have we talked about? We talked about eye test, and yeah, the offense failed the eye test this past week, but the defense made up for it by passing the eye test,
right?
In a way that they hadn't before. So to me, 4 weeks in, regardless of record, which I'm very, very happy to see USC with 4-0, but it's eye test.
Yeah.
And the eye test is passing across the board to me.
Yeah.
Maybe not on the special teams.
So we got a message from Cinque Malcolm in the chat that says no one wants to talk about Caleb Williams and his 3 worst games. So we'll talk about it right here. I mean, I mentioned it literally yesterday on Twitter that Caleb Williams' 44.4 completion percentage at Oregon State was the lowest by a starting quarterback at USC in a win since Matt Barkley was 7 of 22 for 31.8%, while beating ASU in 2009.
I wish I remembered a single thing about that ASU game, because there would have had to be conversations.
There's like 3 games over the last 30 years that I have not watched. That's one of them.
Yeah. I know I watched it. I
listened on the radio to like little parts.
I must have purged it from my brain. The worst we looked this up. The worst completion percentage by a collective USC quarterback room in a game before this, I mean, the only one worse than this, it was in any game, win or lose, was the Sun Bowl. So
Yeah.
that tells you a lot about
The Sun Bowl with the wind.
Okay.
And the whole.
It tells
thing.
you a lot about how bad Caleb was in terms of accuracy in this game. I also just want to reiterate, USC won despite the quarterback completing 44% of his passes. Like,
Yes.
wow.
Yeah. Well, so to go off of the comment about Caleb Williams and his struggle last year against like Baylor and Iowa State, which his numbers in those two games are, they're eerily similar, like Cynthia Malcolm says. Very similar, almost to a T. The difference was in this game, which I think is sort of questionable from the Lincoln Riley perspective of, I think it was the Baylor game. He completed like something like 8 of 18 or something like that. In this game, he was 16 of 36. Like, if he's going to have an off night, then don't keep going to him. Allow other players to step up. And so the concern, and like is being pointed out in the chat right now, is like, you can make the argument that Lincoln Riley's offense is seeing the same things that they struggled against, like Dave Aranda at Baylor, and so on. And will they face this going forward? We talked about with Graham Harrell after the BYU game when BYU dropped 8 and were able to get the pass rush off those 3 guys. Was Kairos Tonga was able to just wreak havoc at the nose tackle position, right?
We're going to have to devote a whole segment to the Nealon nudge so that we take the stink off of mentioning that performance.
Yes. But the point was, we saw that and we think, well, then is every team going to drop 8? Because that is also how Washington was able to beat Washington State every single year under Mike Leach, was to drop 8. Well, are they going to do BYU did it against Graham Harrell and shut SC down. Is the book out? And that's how they're going to do it. The book might be out, and that surely could be a thing, and it's surely going to be a concern if other teams want to mimic what Oregon State did, want to mimic what Fresno State did to take away the run, take away the deep pass. But I think in that game you saw SC against Fresno State still fight through it and still finish off their drives despite not being explosive. And part of that was their commitment to the run, in part because you had the injury issues with Bobby Haskins at left tackle, who went out for the game and then came back in against Fresno State. That forced SC to go to the run. So I think that this will, going forward, be a thing where you have to look at it and say, well, is SC going to be willing? Is Lincoln Riley going to be willing to continue to go to the run when things are not going in the passing game, because these teams are providing these coverages that we've seen before, and the blueprint is sort of out on USC or out on Lincoln Riley's offense? Can they adapt? Can they do things going forward? Because if it happened last year at Oklahoma, and now it's it's already happened again in Game 4, it's going to happen again. How are you going to react? Because you can't have another game in which you have to pull it out and you needed your center to push your quarterback forward to to convert a 4th down, right?
Yeah, but it's on Caleb to react, and it's on Lincoln Riley to react and to do a better job of maybe protecting
and to
his
put your players in the best situation they can be in.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, Lincoln Riley has produced a lot of really good quarterbacks, and I think that if he wants to trust his quarterback, then he is in a position to do that. What I need to see from Caleb is that he learns from this, and again, I don't think it's a surprise that a freshman in those roles playing against those top 10, top 20 type defenses struggles a bit more. And this was a game where I think we saw that sort of youthful Caleb. And I don't want to like let him off the hook every week just by saying he's still a young quarterback, but he is still a young quarterback. These are the kinds of performances that you want to see somebody continue to learn and grow from. And, if he was a junior or a senior, then you could say this is just who he is. And that might be the case. But we also know that Caleb Williams has aspirations to be an NFL quarterback. He takes that very, very seriously. And I think that that it's a situation where I trust Caleb Williams to get his stuff right, because He approaches his game like a pro. So I expect him to respond like a pro. And we'll see. I could be wrong on that, but that's sort of the way I'm approaching it. I'm not hitting panic buttons or anything like that, just because we get to watch it play out. We get to see how this all responds. And if it turns out poorly, then that's something that we'll have to talk about on a future podcast.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to see growth from there.
Yeah.
Because he had those games last year. They were back-to-back games, Baylor and Iowa State. Well, now he's put in a performance that basically equal to those two.
Yeah.
If he would have had a two-thirds of a game that was like that, and then he made an adjustment and grew out of this one, and in the fourth quarter, SC scores 4 touchdowns, and the passing game comes alive and all those things, I think we would feel a lot better about it, because then it's showing growth in progress, and we would have literally seen that in the middle of a game. I don't know that Caleb Williams got better as the game went on in this game.
Well, he made the throw when he had to make it.
He did.
What I'll say for
sure.
him is that final drive, it was a must-do drive, and he got the job done. So,
and he was able to, even though he wasn't able to do it through the air for the most part in that night, he was constantly doing it on his feet.
Like I said, I think Trent in the Slack was really harping on this one, and I agreed with him that pass he tried to fit into Mario Williams in the end zone instead of just taking off and running and getting the first down. Like, that was a huge mistake. That was the kind of play where he had been doing damage with his legs all day. He really should have just, at certain points, just picked his battles a little bit better.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our over-under and look back at our picks going into the Oregon State game and how we did. It's time. Over under last week. Going into the game, you had a 15-10 lead. I was 11-14. I needed a big week in Corvallis. I needed a big one. Your first over under was 5.5. You said 5.5. Oregon State rushes of 10 plus yards. Because SC had ranked 97th in allowing long rushing plays. I ended up taking the over on that. I didn't feel good about it. I took the over. You got locked into the under. At least it was 8. SC allowed 8 rushes of 10 plus yards.
Yeah, and a lot of those came late too. That's annoying.
Yeah, the interesting thing is you look at the numbers, and SC gave up 8 of those 10 rushes, or those 10-yard rushes. Beyond that, they didn't really give up much. And it goes into, like, when you look at things like opportunity rate. Let me see if it's got it's opportunity rate in stat broadcast. No,
I don't think so. No.
Rushing success rate was 39% for Oregon State. He says 26 for SC. That what?
Austin Jones was getting stuffed every time he carried the ball.
No,
Raleek Brown had a
fair,
couple that he got stuffed as well.
Yeah. Anyways,
yeah.
No, I thought Oregon State's rushing game could have been better than it was. They had the big gainers.
USC had some
SC
really
was able
good
to
stops
to hold them to a lot of 1s and 2s.
That's the difference. The difference between this game and the first 3 games in terms of the rushing performance of the other team is, yeah, they broke off a few 10-plus runs, but there were way more 1s and 2s than 5s and 6s, which is what we were seeing in the first 3 games. There's a lot of 5s and 6s.
Yeah, Fenwick averaged 2.6 yards per carry. So when you hold someone to that, that's what you want to do. Next one, you said, or I said, over under 177 rushing yards, 177.5 rushing yards for Oregon State. The Beavers had exactly 178 against both of their first 2 opponents, FBS opponents, Boise State and Fresno State, and SC was averaging 177 allowed. So that was the perfect line. You said over, locks me into the under. It was under 153.
In case people are starting to see a trend, I went all in on this being more of a shootout type game, and it was the opposite of that, and my score reflects that.
I don't not like this.
Yeah.
Not gonna say.
Yeah.
Gonna say. I think this is progressing well so far.
Yeah.
Next one, you said over under 0.5 USC turnovers, aka will USC finally commit a turnover in this game? I said yes. I thought that at some point they would have to, law of averages, etc. I said over. You got locked on the under. Of course, it was the under. It was 0. SC has gone 4 straight games without committing a turnover.
I'll take it.
There you go.
I baited you into that one too. I'm feeling good about it.
I had illusions of grandeur about this game offensively for both teams.
Yeah.
I was setting the line at over under 49.5% field position rate for USC, the percentage of plays that USC would run on the Oregon State side of the 50-yard line. 49.5 was the line. You took the over, which I'm shocked that you were even more confident in that line.
No, I was expecting more of what we saw against Fresno State in the sense of like USC getting across the 50 quickly and then just having a harder time once they got closer to the end zone. So
it was under. SC only spent 41% of their snaps in Oregon State territory, which is another win for me. Love to see it. Your last over-under 38.5. Oregon State third down percent completion. Third down percent rate, success rate, 38.5.
I'm so mad, Michael. I'm so mad.
I took the under on this, which locks you into the over, folks. Stat Broadcast says 38.5, but it's not a push because if you do the math,
I'm so mad.
Oregon State, folks, went 5 for 13. 5 divided by 13, according to calculators, 38.46 under.
I should get a point just for setting that line. Just for setting that line perfectly, like right on the dot. It was pretty good. It was
pretty solid.
You had to break out a calculator to determine who won that one.
I'm a huge fan of 2 decimal places. huge fan.
Killing me.
Next one, I said 150.5 combined penalty yardage for both teams. You took the over, locks me into the under. We both thought that this was going to be a penalty fest. Alicia, the refs decided to just not call any penalties on both teams. Both teams got away with a ton of stuff. SC getting away with PIs and holds. Oregon State getting away with some PIs and holds as well. It was way under at 87 combined penalty yardage.
Yeah, that's just expecting things to play out. More Big Brother references. I should expect the unexpected. Like nothing played out the way it was supposed to in this game.
Yeah,
except for USC winning.
Last one, Alex said 20 points, over under 20.7 USC points allowed. We both took the over, thinking this was going to be an offensive explosion. It was way under 14.
Yep.
USC allowed 14 points in this game, which means for the week, you went 1-6. Yikes. Me, just like my Jacksonville Jaguars, dominated 5-2. 5-2. For the season, we are now deadlocked at 16.
See,
16 wins, 16 losses for each of us. We're 16-16.
All it takes is 1 week and resets the board.
Yes, it does. Big shout out to the weekly winners. We got 4. Only 4 people went 6-1 this week.
It's a hard week to go 6-1
in. Jordan from Canada, Ryan Harvey, Tim in LA, and Nate from Azusa. Big shout out to them. But a bunch of people went 5-2, just like me. 28 pitch, Jess 325. Tofu Garcia, Flan, Tranquillo Hio, Josh from Buckeye Country, that beast out west, D from Hawaii, G-Pat, Callie Matt, Piwello, Callie Cat, and Robin OC. Well done on the 5-2. We go to the season leaders, and we have a clear-cut 1, 2, and 3, and then 4 people tied for 4th place. The 4 people tied for 4th so far this year with a 20-12 record. Jordan from Canada, Monterey Michelle, Piwello, and Tat Freak. 3rd place at 21-11, LA Fred. 2nd place at 22-10, Jay Vandy. And in 1st place, 23-9, Callie Cat.
Callie Cat is on a roll. Killing it.
She's dominating. Yeah, just running away with it a little bit. The game predictions. Vegas had the line at 6.5 at the time that we made our rundown. You said SC would win 45-35. I said SC would win 38-35. I got the margin of victory right. 3 points for SC. I picked Oregon State to cover in that sense, but
pat yourself on the back for
none
that
of
one.
us were right at this.
No.
It was just 17-14.
This game could not have played out more differently than I expected.
Yeah, it was quite different. All right, Alicia, we got a bunch of questions in the chat, and we got some emails and YouTube comments I wanted to get to as well. So let's get to the mailbag. Let's start with an email we got from Tony. Michael and Alicia, this is Tony from Denora, PA, checking you guys out on your CarCast. That was a huge win. Defense stepped up big. Fight on. Yeah, that's a perfect summary.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. The defense coming up big for USC in that game. Cam Lifestyles on YouTube says, speaking of travel, Alicia, what happens when they have to travel across the country? The Horseshoe in Ohio, Happy Valley and State College, or the Big House in Ann Arbor. Then we will see how they handle the adversity of travel and mental preparation.
Yeah, that travel is going to be tough. Absolutely. It's the toughest trade-off that USC has for going to the Big Ten, where they're going to get a huge payday, but they're going to pay for it with the travel thing. On the plus side, every in-conference home game is going to be a lot of travel for the road team as well. So maybe it balances out.
Yeah. Warren says, Alicia, it was the crown of the field that was bothering Caleb Williams. That field has an arch in the middle. A few stadiums still have that. See, how much of a credit do you give the crown?
I still don't think the crown has that much. Like, maybe it's a little bit bothersome for a little bit, but I still don't think it has that much, unless somebody figures out if Baylor's field is a crown, and then we can sort of relate it to past performances where Caleb Williams does poorly on.
I can't imagine it does. Baylor as the new stadium. I think that game was on the road.
No, I'm just I don't buy it personally.
Yeah, I think it's easy to point at as something that's unique. I don't know that it actually plays a role. I mean, Chance Nolan threw 4 interceptions, so maybe you could say that's why he threw the 4 picks. But I don't know. Yeah. That stuff's difficult. The Deadly Knight commented on our CarCast video saying, in regards to the defense, kudos to the coaching staff. They don't have overpowering levels of defensive talent. You have to be content with giving up 18 points per game with 14 takeaways and no turnovers on offense.
More than content. I think you have to be completely thrilled at the where USC stands as far as the defense is concerned after 4 weeks. I'm not just content. I'm ecstatic, in fact.
Yeah. Bill tweeted you on Sunday and said, how about Monday going down a compilation of how the Trojans did in the NFL this week? Drank and Amon-Ra and Pittman had good games. So here's a quick rundown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 catches, 73 yards, and a loss for the Lions. Pittman, 8 catches, 72 yards, and a big win over the Chiefs for the Colts. Drake London, 3 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown. Robert Woods and the Titans beat the Raiders, 4 catches, 85 yards. Nelson Aguilar, 3 catches, 41 yards, and a huge fumble and a loss to the Ravens. Juju Smith-Schuster in a loss to the Colts. Caught 5 balls for 89 yards. And Rasheem Green had 7 total tackles and a half sack in a loss to the Bears.
Yeah, USC's wide receiver the wide receivers that USC has in the NFL are all balling out. Of course, Nelson is always the one that's really productive, except there's always something with him. But it's good to see all those guys succeeding. And Talanoa Hufanga is getting rave reviews with the 49ers. So good to see that from him. And dudes are doing okay. Dudes are doing well.
Yeah, we got an email from Tim. I want to get to that at the end because it's a little off topic. So we'll finish off with that one. So ton of stuff in YouTube. So let's rapid fire these things. Tim says, completely unrelated to anything. Anyone else notice Oregon State's band played smooth jazz? That smooth jazz song from Community.
Do, 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 do.
Something that I wouldn't have noticed because I'm not a Community guy.
I did not notice it. I'm gonna have to go back and listen because I that's one of my favorite gags from that show. I love it. So big ups to Oregon State for playing it. I trust that you guys, when you say they did, I wish I had heard it.
Cameron from Frisco says Saturday's defensive performance is Alicia after Saturday's defensive performance is Alicia optimistic, Alicia, about the defense for the rest of the season? And if so, how much?
I am cautiously optimistic. I still am going to give you guys forewarning. There will be a game where this defense gives up 35 or 40 points. When it comes, I will say I told you so, and it won't be like I won't mean it harshly. I'm just saying like it's going to happen and it'll be okay. Like it's going to happen. Just accept. But they're farther along than I expected after the first 2 weeks of watching them. And I am more and more confident that they can hold their own for the majority of the season. So that's a really, really good feeling.
Yeah. Marcelo says, are you still thinking 10-2 on your prediction? And if so, who other than Utah has the best chance to be the second loss?
I am still thinking 10-2. I still think you lose at Rice Eccles just because it's Rice Eccles. The trip to Corvallis went to show that like these like road trips that we're all worried about, they like the juju is there. Like it's there. So you still lose to Utah. Honestly, Washington State could be trouble. I think maybe if you're looking at a defense that a defensive coordinator gets the better of Lincoln Riley on a day, maybe Cal. You cannot write off UCLA or Notre Dame as potential threats. So yeah, I still think 10-2 is probably the most likely outcome. If it's not, then I'll be happy to be wrong.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think 10-2 right now is a safe number.
Yeah.
It's a safe number. I would say expect 10-2 and hope for better.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time in seeing less at this point.
We've transitioned from a point where I would have told you that like 9-3 is more likely than 10-2, where now it feels like 10-2 is more likely than 9-3.
Yes. Michael Johnson says, why does no one talk about USC special teams duties or how they're divided among the coaches? I need to know who to drag. I mean, should I blame Bob Connolly for this?
You can always blame Bob Connolly for this. I was going to give it a serious answer about how like a lot of teams do this where they don't have a dedicated special teams coach. And when USC did have a special teams coach, it didn't make that much of a difference in terms of special teams. But I agree with Michael Johnson. Who do I yell at when Brendan Rice
It's been awful.
Takes the ball to the 15-yard line for the 15th time this season, or Garrett Bryant Jr., whoever's getting kickoffs, instead of just fair catching it and taking it to the 20, takes the ball to the 15 every single time. Like, stop it. Just, you can fair catch it wherever you are in the field. Just fair catch it.
I know it's annoying. It's really annoying when teams fair catch kickoffs at the 3-yard line.
But do it.
But just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. There's a reason that teams do it. Yeah, just do it. Rambo Murray says, is Utah the only real challenge on our schedule? Don't think USC will challenge us. I think as it stands now, absolutely. It's good that SC misses Oregon and Washington. But I think that Washington State's going to be a little bit trickier than we expected. And I think Cal has a pulse. Notre Dame in November, who knows, maybe they will have turned a corner from there. And I think UCLA, we just don't know what UCLA is yet. I just don't count out rivalry games. They could be 0-4 right now. And I would still tell you. But the records.
Throw them out.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. A few questions from Alex. First one, did this game show us the genius of Lincoln Riley, how he manages quarterbacks and the team to victory?
I don't know that this was the game that showed genius. I think genius would have been putting the ball in Travis Dye's hands.
I think if like I mentioned a few minutes ago, if there would have been in-game progression that showed that everything's hit the fan in the passing game, but we did this, and this, and this is how we fixed it. If like Lincoln Riley came out and did that sort of thing,
yeah, I
would say yes. I don't think that we saw that. Even that last drive was very difficult for SC to move the ball down the field. Alex also says, how do you feel seeing Domani Jackson in the game?
I loved it. Honestly, like the more I think about it, the more I felt very comfortable with a true freshman on the field. He didn't look like a true freshman physically. He didn't play like a true freshman mentally. And one of the things that I really enjoy about Domani Jackson is the same thing I enjoyed about Iman Marshall. And, the defenders that have stood out to me is Kalen Bullock. This is the same. Can you tackle? Like, do you just have that? Are you a good tackler? Just straight up. And to me, early signs are Domani Jackson is a good tackler.
Yeah.
I want good tacklers on the field at all times. So, yeah, feeling good about his debut.
And it helps when you're getting good corner play, like
Yeah.
Mekhi Blackman has been able to put together, that
On the other
makes
side,
it easier not to have to go to your 5-star freshman corner and throw him into the fire. I think that you sort of that was the case with like Jack Jones. It was the case with Adoree Jackson, and for one of those guys it worked. For the other guy, maybe not. Kenny Martin says, by the end of this year, could this game look like the 2016 game against Colorado? Not ranked at the time, but at the end of the season, one of the biggest games of the season.
I would love that for Oregon State. I think that that's a really good pull from Kenny here.
Yeah.
And I think I would love to bring back this question when we get to the end of the season and sort of see if it did come to pass, because I think there's a decent chance. I am not counting Oregon State out of beating Utah. I am not.
I think Oregon State's most difficult thing here is that they're in the North. And even though the divisions don't matter, they do for scheduling.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to play Oregon and Washington State. And
it's a much harder road.
Yeah. Oregon State looks like a 9-3 team by the eye test to me.
Yeah.
But
could be 7-6
with that schedule. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, if everything comes together and they get their wins, they could be a 10-win team. I wouldn't be shocked. But things got to go their way for sure. Randy says, so much of playing football at an elite level is mental. Do you think Caleb Williams can come out of the game a better quarterback, or does this game affect his confidence going forward? Okay, so we talked about last year. He had those struggles against Baylor and Iowa State. He bounced back with a big November.
And those were back-to-back games.
Yes.
Against two of the most difficult defenses that he faced all season. One of them, the first one, was on the road. So, we'll see how he does. But yeah, this is the mark of a good quarterback or an average one, is how do you deal with a setback? And this was certainly a setback for him on a personal level. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. So he bounced back. The next week was after Iowa State was the Oklahoma State loss. But in that game,
he was good.
3 touchdowns, no picks. 51%, so wasn't the worst, but yeah, or Oklahoma State played him better than most defenses. Defense. But then he had the best game of arguably his career in the Alamo Bowl. So I don't know. We'll see how he bounces back. We'll see. Alex says, would a Pete Carroll coach team have won last Saturday's game at Oregon State? Alicia, there's a key component here. I need the context. What year are we talking?
Well,
who is coaching with Pete Carroll?
Yeah.
Is this 2009 Pete Carroll when there's been brain drain and there's nobody else on his sideline? Because the answer is they definitely lose that game. Is this 2004 Pete Carroll where you have a sideline full of stud assistants? Because they definitely win that game.
I think 2004 Pete Carroll might have a similar first half, and then the second half is one of those classic second half Pete Carroll blowouts. Yeah. It's not the Pac-12 road opener, so that's one thing. But Oregon State did terrorize Pete Carroll's teams in Corvallis, so
yeah, it was Corvallis, which might change things as well. Ross says, any comments from Lincoln Riley about the lack of targets for Jordan Addison on Saturday? I didn't hear anything about Jordan Addison. Did you specifically?
No, nothing in specific. We listened to his presser.
Yeah, I don't remember. So we'll see if anything else comes out this week. Ross also says, given the lack of playing time for Gary Bryant Jr., any talk of him redshirting or leaving? He announced last week he's going to redshirt. So that means whatever you want it to mean. Insert your theory there.
Transfer portal opens in December, so we won't know one way or another.
Yeah. SJ says, do you think UCLA will take a page out of Oregon State's book, Oregon State's playbook on how to best position its 25,000 fans at the Rose Bowl for maximum impact? Maybe ask your buddy Jake on that. We need to get Jake on the line.
Love this question, SJ, but don't say it too loudly because they might listen.
Here's the thing about the Rose Bowl. It fans out.
Yeah.
And so the sound just escapes. There's no sound at the Rose Bowl.
That stadium was not designed with acoustics in mind.
It was the Rose Bowl is designed for you to cream your pants at how beautiful it looks.
Yeah.
It's not designed for you to go there and be intimidated by it being a hostile environment.
Yeah.
Completely different thing. Lamont Hart says, I thought Saturday's game was important for the team as a whole, but I heard and saw a lot of commentators say that they're worried more after the Oregon State game. What says you? I think this matters starting Saturday. How do they respond? Because if this ends up being a telltale sign of what's to come, where every defense is going to end up doing the same thing that Oregon State did, and we talked about it before, but like sort of what Fresno State did too, then yes. And if SC is not going to be able to find a way to break that down, problem. If this is something that they get through and just completely rebounds, not a problem. I go back to 2004. Remember that Cal game? The first game that game day was at the Coliseum. In a lot of ways, Cal outplayed USC. Aaron Rodgers has the game of his life. Completed his first 23 passes. He was incredible. Who gets the last laugh? SC does, because they get a huge sack from Manuel Wright on second down, forces a 3rd and 4th and long. They get the big stop that closed it in the Coliseum, the loudest you've ever heard the Coliseum in your life. What did they do in the next week? They came out against ASU, a good ASU team at the time with Andrew Walter at quarterback, murdered them. Like, just took out all of their frustration from the last week. It's like, Clay Helton's big phrase, drive it like you stole it.
Yeah.
That ASU game was SC driving it like they stole it. Just completely steamrolled them with all the momentum from the Cal game from the week before.
Which, by the way, I don't like the drive it like you stole it thing, because I feel like if you stole a car, you wouldn't want to call attention to yourself, so you'd like follow all the traffic laws and be very
also team violation. I think if you steal it. Yeah. Just saying.
My thoughts on this is really simple. It comes down to whether or not Oregon State laid a blueprint or not, and whether or not USC is able to overcome that blueprint.
Right.
But to me, I think that people who looked at that game and thought this is like the worst case scenario for USC, I think there might have been some illusions that USC's offense would always be completely unstoppable, and I don't think I was ever under that illusion. I expected there to be a dud of a game at some point. So to me, the takeaway still is, USC's defense has a pulse. More than to me, until we see more of the season, this feels like a fluke game for the offense. It didn't feel like a fluke game for the defense. And so that's what I'm taking from it.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see how it comes to be. Big T37 says, was Riley trying too hard to give Williams some better padded numbers? I'm sure he started the run was more effective. I'm not going to believe that Riley's motivation is the numbers.
Nope.
on something like that. Otherwise, you would have seen Riley, Caleb Williams in the final drives against Rice, right? I don't think the numbers are a thing. I think it's just his confidence in Caleb Williams. And look at how we talked about Caleb Williams for the first 3 weeks. A lot of confidence in him. So I get having confidence in him to get through those things. But at some point, you can kind of mix and match there. Alex says, any brand new offensive plays USC will unveil each game. I don't know. We're going to have to see how that goes. I will say, I'm kind of tired of the counter tunnel screen.
Yeah, it's getting overused, and like the bubble screen. The bubble screen was great when teams don't expect it, but now teams expect it with the tunnel screen. So just hold off for a few weeks until teams aren't expecting it again.
The counter tunnel screen was beautiful against Stanford.
Showed it too many times.
And they've run it 3 times in every game since, and it's gotten blown up every time.
Yeah. Go in that formation, do something totally different, because the defense knows what they're looking at now.
Yes. Yeah. Randy says, is it true Caleb wouldn't speak with the press after the game? I didn't hear that. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't see any interviews with him after the game, so I don't know that he did speak with the press. But also, I will say road games are weird in terms of players getting out and to the buses and stuff. And USC has also changed some of their media stuff, so I'm not even sure that the idea is to have access to all the players after the game anyways. Like,
Yeah.
I think that what they're doing is sort of choosing players to go speak to the media. So, I think it's very presumptive to say that Caleb refused. I would, if I was USC, I wouldn't have put him in the fire line. If I was USC's SID, yeah, I would have snuck him out to the van too. Like, I wouldn't.
Yeah, the I don't think that would have been Caleb's choosing, A, and
Yeah.
B. Or if it was, then it would maybe have been like something. It still would have been the decision of
the SID.
Yeah, of SC's staff. The way the system works, at least for home games, it used to work. You would go to the main conference room, press conference room, and there'd be like the two big players of the game, right? Like for this game, it was Travis Dye and Eric Gentry, right? And then after that, you stand in the tunnel, and as the players leave, you could interview them all as they walk out. That got changed before the Rice game, and they said that now all the interviews have to be conducted inside the press conference room. So they were going to bring in more players into the press conference room and kind of shuffle them in and out for home games. Road games, I'm not exactly sure how it's working now. So
I bet it's the same thing where they have just a scrum and
it's probably very similar. Yeah. Either way, it's less access. So I would probably view that more as like an access thing rather than I don't want to talk to the press thing.
Yeah.
Which I guess you can argue the access thing is an I don't want to talk to the press thing, but I don't think that that's Caleb Williams' decision.
Yeah.
Lamont Hart says, question, Caleb was bad. This we all know, but I'm hearing and seeing a lot of people killing him unnecessarily. The kid has only started 11, 12 games. He's young. He's going to have one of these games. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
That's where I'm at. I don't think this is Caleb Williams. I think this is a fluke game for him. I expect him to bounce back. Like I said earlier, if this continues to happen, then it might just be who he is. But we'll see.
Yeah. Ricky D says, "Have the Oklahoma fans finally left you alone?"
I have not had
quiet.
I have not had an Oklahoma fan in my mentions since Saturday. I can tell you that much.
Mateo says, "Are the Beaver cornerbacks that good, or do we foresee similar issues if we stick to the pass when this type of defense comes up again?"
Their secondary is okay. I struggled, and I'm not going to have time to rewatch the game, but I struggled to remember. Like, to me, it was just the inaccuracy was the problem. The receivers weren't getting open, like wide open or anything like that, but when they were available to me, there were more inaccurate passes than like, oh, the corner's on the guy and not letting him catch the ball. So
yeah, well, Fresno State's kind of had the thing where it was the dropping back in coverage thing, which opened up the running lanes. And I think that Oregon State was doing a lot of the similar things, but on top of that, it was the inaccuracy that kind of played into it too. So it's kind of both things.
Yeah.
Were really issues there. Glenn says, "Why is Alicia's camera in 4K and Michael's in standard definition?" Okay. So I'm looking at my camera right now. It says HD 1080p on my camera. By the way, I think I bought this webcam in like 2010.
Well, okay,
it's still going.
No, I mean, and that's your answer. I bought this webcam like 3 months ago, and I'm pretty sure it is a 4K webcam, even though I don't know if it's actually 4K. But you know how they advertise everything. So Michael is using a decade-old webcam, and I am using a 2022 webcam, and we probably just need to upgrade him.
Probably. Trek Ranger says, "Tired of the tunnel screen. If it works or sets up a bigger play deeper in the game, then I'm fine with it. To say you're tired of it 4 games in is strange." No, that's fair. Yes. You're not wrong, and I agree.
It's not working, and it wasn't setting up other things deeper in the game, so that's why we're tired of it.
Yes, and if it needs to fail to set up something, that's fine. But I want to be able to see that, and I don't know that I'm always going to be able to see that. I'm not the biggest
Yeah.
X's and O's person, especially watching on first watch, etc. But like the way it's looked the last two games, it just has been overly clunky there. Yeah, let's go back to the email we got from Tim and wrap this thing up. Tim says, "Real cheese move in silence like lasagna," quoting Lil Wayne. If you stack two cooked lasagnas on top of each other, does it become one single larger lasagna? Well, I see both of your points, but if I have to pick one side, it's Alicia's. That's because they remain two lasagnas. I think she's correct because a lasagna is a single distinct food item. Yes, it's made up of layers, but there is a difference between the top and the inner layers. Even if they're identical in composition, the top has a sear, which the others don't. To take the pancake analogy, there's no difference between the top and the middle stack of pancakes. So if you're going to stack one on top of the other, it's one larger stack of pancakes. But with lasagna, if you put one on the other, you still see a distinct separation where one stops and the other one starts. For what it's worth, like I put in the chat last week, my Italian wife sided with Michael. Hope I can make the Fallout live stream tonight and ask an actual relevant question. Keep up the great work. The live interaction with you and the other Rotbots has been a blast. Tim from LA.
Thank you, Tim, for the email. I think you hit exactly what I was trying to say. To me, when you cook a lasagna, the top of your lasagna is a very distinct texture and composition to the bottom of your lasagna. The cheese at the top of your lasagna gets cooked entirely different. Like the lasagna is its own packaged thing. And when you take that and you do this, you just have stacked two separate lasagnas on top of each other within their stacks. I think my pancake analogy does fail correctly, but I will try to sort of counter. If you gave me a stack of pancakes and then prepared it on the top with whipped cream and fruit and syrup and whatever else is going on the top of that pancake, and then delivered two of those stacks of pancakes to me, and I took this stack and stuck it on the other stack, like I'd still be stacking the two pancakes. Like they're two different stacks of pancakes prepared as you are intended to eat them, and then you are just making them taller.
Can I let me say this? What is there anything definitive? Like, okay, yes, there's a sear on the top of the other ones, but that's just because when you cook it, the top one automatically sears.
That's my point. Is that when you
and the bottom one gets a little crusty. Sure.
When you cook a piece of lasagna, you are creating just like if you cooked brownies and you get your edges and your top,
the best piece in the middle. We all agree.
Yeah. Right? Depending on how I'm feeling, sometimes I get a little. Sometimes I like an edge. Sometimes I get a little edgy. But if you took like you
have fun with that one, Jake.
I know. You cook a brownie though, and then stack the other brownie on top of the other brownie, like you're creating a different sort of set of circumstances because your brownies are cooked in a certain way that they create textures in where they were cooked in an oven.
The layers of here's the thing about the lasagna. There is not one way to make a lasagna. Like making a lasagna is not, the top layer has to have X. The bottom layer has to have Y. The middle layer has to have Z.
Like, no. There is one way to make a lasagna. I'm not talking about how you layer it.
Open the box of Stouffer's and put it in the microwave. Yes. No, I agree with that part.
Like is our plan tonight. But no, my point is, if you're making a lasagna with a standard like casserole pan, you're going to do it the same idea as if you made a lasagna with a deep pan that you're making like a tall lasagna. Because the lasagna, the way it's cooking, you are intending to get a nice, crispy, sort of baked, cheesy goodness at the top.
But your edges are going to get too. It's still
the cheese cooks differently. Cheese is different when it cooks within a thing versus when it's exposed to the broiler kind of element.
Can I just ask you a very simple question?
Yes.
From a very simplistic view here, is a lasagna not layers of varied cheese, sauce, and meat
Yes.
and pasta, right?
Cooked in a casserole dish.
But yes, but those four things: layered cheese, sauce, pasta, and meat, right?
Yes.
We agree that that's what
Yes.
that's what makes a lasagna.
A lasagna, but a lasagna is not just cheese.
No, hold on,
because what you're describing could just as easily be like what's it called? Like just a pasta. You could just make a pasta. You could do shells. You could do all those things.
Yes, but it's a sheet pasta. Right?
A lasagna is a sheet pasta.
Yes.
Cooked in a casserole.
Yes, but it's layered with cheese, sauce, and meat.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Now, nowhere in that does it say that only the top layer can be crispy.
No.
And only the middle one can have
if I went to a restaurant and they served me lasagna without the top layer, I would be pissed. Because that's the best layer. The best layer is that top,
but it's still
cheesy,
lasagna.
Crispy. But it's not lasagna if it doesn't have that top. Like I'm feeling shit. I like somebody cheated me out of this.
When you stack the two things of thing, you're getting more of those because now you get one in the middle.
No, because now
that's
you're putting
even better.
But you're still that's fine. You have two slices of lasagna.
One still has it.
You still either whether you eat them this way or this way. Or this way, you still have two slices of lasagna in the end. That's what you have.
Last week, we got a comment that said, if you stack two cakes, it's one cake. Yes.
Not if you finish the cake.
If you finish the cake and you stack it, it's
no. If you cook two cake pans of cake and then intend to do a layered cake, and then frost that cake the way you would an actual cake gets frosted, that is its own cake. As opposed to each cake pan cake.
Rama Murray just said it's time to go. It's time to go.
Yeah, I do have to get back to work.
Yeah. And
see, Malcolm, they're deep in Maryland.
And Cameron, yes, we are actually having lasagna tonight.
Yeah.
And I just go back to Tim's wife said it was me. So
also, Mateo, a bagel is a bagel. It's not a donut. Stop it with this nonsense.
I mean, it could be.
No, a bagel is a bagel.
All right. If you guys are
just
still
like
here,
a hot dog is a hot dog. It is not a sandwich.
Be sure to subscribe, and we'll talk more about these crazy things on Wednesday as we talk about USC and ASU. Review that. So we'll be back at 5:00 on Wednesday here on YouTube. If you're listening to an Apple's podcast, be sure to give us a review there as well. We couldn't do this without you. Remember, big shout out to our huge fan base
in South Korea.
In South Korea.
Yeah.
Thank you. Till then, see ya.
See ya.